Welcome to Let's Relieve Regret, the uplifting podcast where we talk about how to relieve what you're worrying about.
It can feel so good to finally let go. Let go of past hurts, let go of old grudges, let go of self-doubt, self-shame.
The thing is, we aren't always given the tools to let go. We're told to get over it, or it's time to move on. But how do we do that?
We will share our stories, tools, and strategies of how we let go to help you let go.
Yeah. Let's begin. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Let's Relieve Regret podcast. My name is Victoria Muir-Bercia, and I'm joined by my co-host,
Shadoe Ball. Hello.
And we want to welcome you to this interim episode.
Yeah. Season 5 kickoff.
Season 5 kickoff. We can't believe we're already kicking off season 5. It's season 4 was really amazing.
Yeah.
Let's chat about it. But first, let's do a check-in. Shadoe, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling pretty good. I had a couple of quick doctor's appointments this morning, but still really happy to chat with you this afternoon.
How are you feeling on a scale of 1 to 10?
Probably like a 7. Yeah. How about you?
I'm like tired in my body, but it's a good tired, which I'll tell you why for my cause for applause. But yeah, I'm like tired in my body in a good way because I've been using my body, if that makes sense. So I'm probably gonna give myself a 7 too.
Nice.
I only had an hour and a half nap today. I've had a 2-hour nap today. So, you know how much I love my naps. So
for sure. Well, especially, I mean, we should just segue that into your cause for applause. Why are you taking such long naps?
Oh, well, I got myself a trainer.
Nice.
And I'm really happy about it. I'm also going to preemptively say you can totally give me feedback on what I'm about to say. But I believe that like all trainers need trainers, like everybody needs a coach. Even though I'm a wellness coach, your brain, like you still need someone sometimes to just tell you what to do, or someone to get you outside of yourself, like a different perspective, right? So I could totally work out myself, but I got a trainer to, push me. But really, like, the reason I got it is, and this is the part that I know you're going to give me back on, but is I want my body back. I don't know how else to say it. So like, this is like, I got a trainer. I prepaid for 6 months, and I'm like, I want my body back. I keep having these issues after my surgery. Okay, it's time for me to like take control back. And I don't know how much control I can take back, but I feel really nervous with my body in ways that I've never felt nervous before. Like, oh, I'm going to try doing this fitness move, and I'm like, I'm nervous. I don't know how my abs are going to react to that, or I don't know, right? How my body's going to react to that. And I don't love how I look in pictures right now. So part of it is a little bit like me feeling strong again, but another part of it's a little bit vain. I feel good about saying that, I guess, but I don't want it to be interpreted in the wrong way, because I'm not saying I want to lose 50 pounds and be whatever. But anyways, I've only had like 3 sessions. But like when you work your body and your muscles are sore and you're just tired and your body's getting used to that routine again. So that's why I'm tired and taking naps, because as we age, everybody 35-ish to 40-ish on, we can still work out just as intensely as we did when we were younger, or we can build ourselves back up to that fitness. We just need more recovery time. So I'm like, okay, so this is how my body's changed. This is my aging body. And I can't do a workout on Wednesday and another equally intense workout on Friday. I need to do a workout and then have 2 days and then do my next intense workout. So like Tuesday and Friday instead of Wednesday and Friday kind of thing.
Nice.
But it's a good fatigue. And I'm like, okay, I know I'm building muscle. I know that this is gonna make a difference on the scale, in the mirror, how I feel about myself in day-to-day life, being able to lift grocery bags, like all those kinds of things. But so it's a cause for a clause, but I guess maybe it's a hesitant cause for a clause.
Okay. No, I think getting a trainer is great for anyone who wants it. And I think, yeah, no, I think I'm really happy for you that this is something that like you want and you're going for.
I guess like the
Um,
feedback is like I have this thing where like and this is like I know this is a fine line. So
sure.
I mean, we have the aging female body and we should embrace the aging female body.
Hmm.
But I also don't believe that we should use that as an excuse to be like, well, I'll never be fit again or I'll never
Right.
have that again because I believe in the body's capacity to regenerate. So I've had like some people be like, Victoria, it's unrealistic for you to think you're going to get your body back. And I don't
Right.
think it's unrealistic for me that I can get my post surgery body back. I think that I
Right.
can. And by that I mean the strength that I had before. I don't
Hmm.
think that's unrealistic, but then I've had other people kind of poo poo on it, right? And be like, well,
Hmm.
it's unrealistic. And I don't think that it is.
Right. I think again, if you're focusing on the strength element, then that's great. I think and I mean it's okay to have the desire to be smaller and like look a different way in pictures. Of course, that's totally fine. I guess the only concern I would echo, I guess,
Mhm.
is that, I wouldn't want you to, and I know you wouldn't, so that's why I guess I'm a little bit more careful here. If let's say you go through all this work and the only improvements are the overall fitness, carrying groceries, feeling stronger in your body, and you don't get those visual results, how are you going to feel then?
Yeah.
That's
And that's
that's
why
the only
people,
concern.
I think that's why I've had some feedback on people being like, it's unrealistic or whatever, but I'm just going to hold on to hope. But
Yeah.
that's the feedback I thought you were going to give me. And I'm
Yeah.
aware.
Yeah, exactly. And like as long as you don't completely like because that ends up becoming where it gets tricky is because some people will then say, well, I worked this hard and my photos look the same, so I'm going to stop working at it versus like and they totally ignore all these other benefits that came with the change, right? Because it didn't look a certain way.
Yeah, I don't think
So
I don't think I'll get to that point. So yeah, it's an important point. I think it's an important point to make on both sides. Like
yeah.
it's okay to say, I want to feel stronger and look better. Like I
Hmm.
want to see muscle definition in my arm,
Yeah.
right? That's where I'm kind of running the middle line here, but I'm finding like
Mm,
with people I talk to, it's one or the other. It's either like
right.
completely unrealistic and I'm going to eat 500 calories a day and only eat protein and look like a
Hmm.
50-year-old bodybuilder, or it's like just accept what you have. And I
Right.
believe that we can always like be better.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
know I'm balancing a fine line right now with what
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
saying,
yeah,
but I'm saying it. I'm putting it out
yeah,
there.
and that's
I'll let you
fine.
guys
And
know.
yeah, well, I know, like you said, you're taking it in a measured way. Like, yeah, I don't think, yeah, yeah, no, I think you're doing it in the right way. And yeah, I look forward to hearing more about that as it continues.
Yeah. So I'm fatigued. My butt
Mhm.
is so sore.
That's so funny.
Like the first session was just like all glute work. And I'm like,
Right.
okay, great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You did it.
All I feel is my butt. And today I did push-ups and like assisted chin-ups. And one of my goals is to be able to do a chin-up again. Cause before
Hmm.
the surgery, I could do a chin-up. Well, let's say before
Right.
COVID, because I gained weight over COVID. I could do
Hmm.
chin-ups. And I'd really like to be able to do chin-ups. And I've seen 60-year-olds do chin-ups. So
Right.
I believe that I could do it again.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
again, that's a great goal.
Yeah.
That's an awesome goal, right? Because it is something that is achievable and measurable, and it's not predicated on all these other messages we're given. So I
Yeah.
think, yeah. Anyway, well, congrats. That sounds
Thanks.
really good. Yeah.
What's your cause for applause?
My cause for applause is that I finally saw my hairstylist after 3 years of not seeing him.
Ooh.
I
Yes.
know
You cut your hair yourself
I
over.
have been cutting my hair myself. I did have to go for like an emergency haircut, which sounds ridiculous, but I had been cutting my hair myself for a while. And then about a year and a half ago, my cousin got married, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll just go get like a quick haircut from just to even it all out. But my main stylist was away on vacation. And so I went to this other person, and she did something to my bangs that took like 6 months to recover. And then so it's so funny. I wanted to see him like in January, like 6 months ago. I was ready to be like, oh, I got to make an appointment with him. And then I'm like, I wonder if he's going to be mad that like I just haven't seen him in three
No,
years.
we
Because I
just
used
feel that way, don't
I
we?
I know, and I like it's funny too because like I used to see him every 6 months, even more frequent than he was just kind of part of that routine. And then like slowly over the years, I've seen him less and less frequently. And then truthfully, the last time I saw him, I didn't like the highlights he gave me, and then I just never
Mm.
told him. And now it's like 3 years later, and I'm like, hi. um, but we caught up, and like I even did, we did talk about like a bunch of stuff around my hair and just a bunch of other stuff, and it was like we had built such a rapport. So it was just so nice to see him again and just be like reminded that like he's not mad. Like he's just happy to see me again. Like he's not mad that the time has gone by. He was actually like pretty complimentary about how like my hair was a little bit of a mullet in the back, but like overall, like wasn't that bad for someone who's been cutting it themselves for so long. And we just talked about the density of it. Like, so he kept the length. He took out like when I looked down on the ground, it was like a Gertie sized ball of hair on the ground. But like my hair is the same length. It's like really nice. It dries faster now. So yeah, it was just really nice to see him and catch up and also like push through that feeling of like, oh no, like I let this go sour and now I can never see this person again.
Yeah, I do
Yeah.
that too with anxiety. And then I'm like, if only I just talked to that person earlier, I wouldn't feel this way and wouldn't have lost that
Hmm.
connection or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
I've totally done that in the past too.
Yeah. So yeah, so my cultural applause is that he was really like generous with his time and like literally as soon as I messaged him, he found a spot right away for
Yeah.
me to come in for a cut. So
And
and
do you
even when
feel good about your hair?
I do, I feel really good about it. Yeah, and it was like nice to see him and like the spot he works at's really cool. And so I like, I like being in that area too and just like walking around after my haircut and like, you know, like a little skip to my step.
Amazing.
You did remind me of something when you said anxiety. Have you seen the trailer for Inside Out 2?
Oh, I'm so excited.
I am too.
I loved the first movie so much.
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
like it's for adults just as much as it is for
Oh,
kids. So for
absolutely.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. In the trailer, they introduce a new character named
There's two,
Anxiety.
right? Is it
There's
anxiety and
three.
embarrassment?
There's anxiety, embarrassment, ennui, and there's probably a couple others, but
Yeah. When does it come out soon?
June 14th.
Oh,
Yeah, like in
June
like 10
14th.
days. Yeah.
I am excited. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so this episode's going to be a little bit different, everybody. This is kind of our recap episode. And if you've been listening along, we like to do a little recap, lessons learned, feedback from
Hmm.
the last season. And we really went for it last season, I think.
I
We had
agree.
a lot of guests. We challenged ourselves to have guests. Like in season 3, we had a couple guests, but they were like friends that we knew and we were like figuring it out, right?
Hmm.
And we put a call out for guests and we had such an amazing response. I was so,
Hmm.
I mean, I use the word excited a lot. It's not excited. I was just honored,
I think honored is the word for me as well.
validated a bit that what we're doing is connecting to people. So
Hmm.
we put out a call for guests, and I think we had, was it 10 responses or 8 responses? We had all of them. So I can't
Hmm.
remember how many guests we had last season
Yeah.
because it's just amazing. And also the stories that people told on the podcast. And also, I know, I guess honored is the word, but that our guests felt safe enough to tell these stories and to use the format that we've
Hmm.
created, right? I mean, we didn't
Yeah.
make it up ourselves, but we took things from things that exist like reflective listening and things we've both learned in therapy and things that we've
Hmm.
learned along the way. And we created kind of this format, and I just think our guests were incredible. So today we're just gonna kind of talk about some maybe things that we learned or some
Hmm.
wins or how we feel about it. And the first thing I'm gonna say is I'm really proud of the format that we've created. So if you
Hmm.
haven't caught on yet, out there, listener. We do our check-in,
Mm-hmm.
pause for applause. And, the reason that we do that is we want to see what each other's vibe sense is. How are you feeling today?
Yeah.
Is your energy low? Is your energy high? How can I support that? How can I mimic it? Right. And then our cause for applause is really just to give our brains a little dopamine hit, because every time
Mm-hmm.
you acknowledge even the smallest, teeniest, tiniest thing, you give yourself a celebration, and that gives you a little dopamine hit. And that kind of sets us up to get into the podcast. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
as adults, we often don't every day have a cause for applause. We don't celebrate the small stuff because we're just forward thinking, forward thinking. I call it
Mm-hmm.
forward motioning. Okay, what's the next thing? Okay, what's the next thing? And I love doing our cause for applause.
Oh
And then, of
yeah.
course, we get into our regrets, right? And so people have really embraced this formula, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been
Mm-hmm.
getting feedback in the DMs or feedback in emails. I actually had a client that I was talking to last week that said, "Oh, guess what I did with a friend?" And I was like, "What did you do?" And she was like, "I asked her if she wanted feedback or just to be heard." And I was like, "Hey."
Yay.
It's
Mm-hmm.
so great. So, anyways, is there anything you want to say about our guest Shadoe? How I think
Uh, I was really impressed with how seriously everyone took it. Not that they were necessarily serious people, but they just took it with such like, again, I don't want to overuse the word honor, but that's exactly how I felt. I just felt like it felt so nice that people felt safe to share this stuff with us. So I also think, kudos to our little pre-interview process as well. We want people to come on who don't feel scared, but do feel like, I guess, unsettled, right? Like they want to feel like they want to release something to make them feel more alive, more settled, more like able to live. Well, again, interestingly, with more of a forward thinking like lens. So if we can give people that relief, like that's amazing. And I do like that. Yeah, like I was really impressed with how vulnerable people were being, because as much as I really enjoy being vulnerable myself, I know it's something that a lot of people have to work on. Yeah, to watch people work on it live was just incredible.
and I would even say you've done the work to be vulnerable yourself, right? Like
Mm,
it's a process to do that. You have,
yeah,
because I think for you, we've talked about this a lot, is like you found the balance. You used to
right.
overshare,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but now you figure out, okay, what is the thing that I can be vulnerable about and share that
Yeah, yeah.
oversharing.
Well, and that's actually thank you for bringing that up. I think that's something that a lot of people who maybe are more extroverted would say, like, oh, I'm an open book. I'm completely vulnerable, blah, blah, blah. But it turns out that they end up being open books about topics that like are maybe not appropriate for the situation they're in, or they are purposely really, really super open about sex because they don't want to talk about how scared of being alone they are. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
there's like this whole other
You totally
side of
think of
it.
people like that.
Yeah, and I think that used to be something I really gravitated towards and did, because then like you can't accuse me of hiding anything. Like I talk about the craziest
I talk
things.
about the taboo things. But I think, yeah,
Yeah.
that's such a good point, because I find that people that do that too much or share too much, it's usually because they actually do have a wall up.
Yes, and it just takes
So
a
they're
different
trying to
form.
control their vulnerability. And the thing is that
Hmm.
sometimes we can't control our vulnerability. We just have to let it happen.
Yeah.
I think quite a few of our guests came in being like, okay, this is really new for me. I've never told this
Hmm.
story before. And we have some coming up in this season as well that haven't told their story publicly before. And they were just like, okay, I'm going to try this and let's move through it and see what happens. So
Hmm.
kind of came in knowing that it was a safe space, but also expecting the unexpected.
Hmm. Yeah.
And like one thing that I say to myself, and it's an affirmation I give to my one-on-one clients a lot and to myself, is can handle anything that comes my way, or I can do hard things. And
Hmm.
but the interesting thing about that is I had a discussion with a client just the other day too, that I can do hard things does not mean I can do hard things alone.
Mm-hmm.
Or I can handle anything that comes my way doesn't necessarily mean I can handle anything that comes my way alone.
Mm-hmm.
What it means is I trust myself and I have the tools, or I trust myself to reach out and get the support I need so that I can handle anything that comes my way. That's what I can
Mm-hmm.
handle anything that comes my way means. So I didn't think about it that way. So I want to thank that client for having that conversation with me, or we kind of like like established what that affirmation means, because
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't mean I have to do everything on my own and I have to fix everything on my own. But it just means I'm going to trust myself to be vulnerable and
Mm-hmm.
know that I have the support, or I have within me what I need to handle whatever happens when I am vulnerable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's really important. I think you actually talked about that in your cause for applause a little bit. Last season, I talked about how hard it is to ask for help for the things I know how to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only struck me recently that just because you have the capability to do something doesn't mean you have the capacity to do it.
Ooh, that's a
Yeah.
good
And so
quote.
that's something I've been
That's a
thinking
good
about a
one.
lot. I've been thinking a lot about the different times where I've judged myself about like, well, I can't hire a cleaner. I know how to clean. I just got to do it. Or I can't hire a
Yes.
trainer because I know I'm supposed to work out. I just have to do it. Like, but sometimes you just don't have the capacity to do all the things you're supposed to do. And again, sometimes you don't even have the money to hire out extra help. But like it's so easy to say it to other people, right? Like you see someone else floundering and you're like, don't do it yourself, ask for help. But then when you're floundering, you're like, don't bother anyone. So I that's something I would
Exactly.
still love to like, I still have to work on a little bit because that's where I do struggle with vulnerability is saying like, I need someone to do this for me, not because I don't know how to do it, but because I just don't have whatever it is, the energy, the time, the interest, etc.
Yes, I love that so much. And I think like we learn that just by like observing our guests or being in it with them
Mm-hmm,
in some
mm-hmm.
ways, observing them, listening to them, hearing their stories.
Yeah, and also a lot of them gave, I'm gonna just call myself out here, like a lot of grace with the scheduling. There was the one guest in particular where we had to change her recording date a bunch of times, and I was certain she was just going to be like, "Well, you guys had your chance, goodbye." And I would have respected that. I would have been like, "Yep, we really jerked you around here," but she stuck with it, and I think her episode's really beautiful, and I can't wait for our guests to hear it. So yeah, I just again that really that also illuminated for me the how much harder I am on myself than someone else, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Because I started telling myself this story where like, oh, she emailed me and I haven't gotten back to her in a week, so that's it. It's over. you know.
And I think for me too, like what I'm getting from that is I'm so grateful that people want to come onto the podcast, and that so this kind of happened. Shadoe and I kind of had this discussion too, is what's the purpose of the podcast? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the beginning, it was kind of like a little, maybe a little lighter. We were trying to make it more accessible. We didn't want to come in and be like really deep and have people be like, I don't want to listen to that. That's too hard to listen to, I guess.
Yeah.
And a lot of podcasts out there, like some podcast coaches we've talked to and stuff, have said like the purpose should be to funnel it into your businesses to make
Mm-hmm.
money.
Mm-hmm.
And sure, that would be
Yeah.
a great bonus,
Mm-hmm.
but that's not the intention. It's a bonus. And I think we're doing that a bit differently than how a lot of people with small businesses run podcasts, because we've always said our purpose is to reach as many people as possible and to help them heal, basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's just really good validation for us that so many people have said, I want to come on and tell this story. And
Yeah.
the way the podcast has evolved from season one is now we're getting some really fantastic stories. So, as an
Mm-hmm.
example, if you haven't already listened to the episode with my sister-in-law, and
Mm-hmm.
that episode is called "You Are Not a Drop in the Ocean, You Are the Ocean in a Drop." her regret was, I regret not getting help from a therapist sooner. And isn't that so hard to say publicly?
Yeah,
And isn't that
absolutely.
so hard? But she came on, she's also a nurse. She worked in the ICU during the pandemic, right? And so, but she came on because she knew that telling the story would be healing for her, but also telling the story would is important for other people to hear. And so, if you haven't listened to that episode, we're going to point out a couple episodes here, everybody. If you haven't listened to that one, it is such a fantastic episode. It's one of our top listened to episodes, actually.
Hmm.
So that episode is called "You Are Not a Drop in the Ocean. You Are the Ocean in a Drop." It's really amazing. And I think that was a little bit of the tipping point for us where we started
Yeah.
evolving into what are the things that we can talk about that will help others.
Yeah, absolutely
Yeah.
agree. Yeah, and I do like that we're still taking turns offering our regrets when we have guests, because it would be very tempting to just have guests do it. But our continued vulnerability also helps the guests open up a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think that makes them, I mean, the feedback we've had from some guests is it made me feel more comfortable that one
Hmm.
of you shared a regret as well. We've had feedbacks from guests, for example, Louise Carr, who what's the name of her episode?
I think you can change
You
at
can
any
change at
time.
any age, right?
Oh,
She
any
wrote us
age,
an
yeah.
email afterwards, after her experience, saying, it was a couple weeks after, saying, I'm still thinking about it. I'm still thinking about
Hmm.
that aha moment I had when I came on the show.
Yeah.
When Shadoe said, you're not a
Uh,
mop. Like you
yeah,
couldn't.
or like you were trying to like clean up the whole ocean with just a mop. And like, yeah, because she was still judging herself so harshly for a situation that like she couldn't have predicted, and still got out of that situation, even with how tough it was. So it was breaking my heart a little bit to hear how hard she was being on herself. So I do again hope that she found some relief from our session. And I mean, she did. She told us as much. So it's not,
She said it was.
yeah.
And sometimes that's all you need is just a little perspective, right? So if you want to listen to that episode, everybody, it's called You Can Change the Age. And she's also actually amazing too, because she also is a nutritionist that works with women with menopause. So we had a great discussion at the
Mhm.
beginning about what's going on with like how you should change your eating patterns a little bit if you're over 40 and
Mhm.
those sorts of things too. So I learned a lot in that episode as well.
Mhm.
And that episode was about leaving a partner.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that
I have to tell you this funny thing that happened earlier today. When
yeah,
I was at one of my doctor's appointments, I was using the washroom and I could hear the receptionist, and she kept saying regular, irregular, or menstrual, and like pretty loudly.
you
And I was like, what's
irregular.
going on over there? And then like when I came out of the bathroom, there was like this old man like talking to the receptionist, so confused. He was there for his wife, I guess, like he was setting up an appointment for her or whatever else, but he didn't know the answer because he was like, because she was like, her periods, is it regular, irregular, or menstrual? And I just like felt so bad for like the gentleman, the person. I also felt bad for the receptionist because like I get that she probably has to put that down when she's like booking the appointment. But like I could hear her from a couple rooms down, and again, to make a total like maybe unfair judgment just based on the age of this gentleman, like I'm assuming his wife is in the menstrual zone, not
Menopause zone.
yeah, menopausal
Yeah.
zone.
Let's dive into that for a quick sec.
Yeah.
I think this is interesting. I know we've talked about this on the podcast before, and I know
Hmm.
that like it's getting better with the generations. I hope it is anyways. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
my husband would totally be able to answer that question.
Mine too. Yes.
Yeah. I've had a couple, I don't know why in the past like 2 months, this happened 3 or 4 times when I've been like
Mm.
in the pharmacy and there's been a man just standing staring at the wall of tampons.
Yeah.
And they're just like lost, right?
Right.
And I'll be like, "Can I help you?"
Yeah.
I'm like, what did your partner or wife
Yeah,
say?"
yeah,
And
yeah.
he's like, I don't know, super."
Yeah.
It's literally happened like 3 times in the past 2 months.
Nice.
But it just like how you were kind of saying the topics that we want to talk about when we're extroverts might be
Hmm.
topics that feel taboo, but there's also a place for that. We should talk
Yeah.
about sex
Yeah.
and we should talk about women's body, and men should understand what's going on with our bodies. And like my
Mm-hmm.
husband can totally be like, Victoria's flow is heavy for the first
Yeah.
3 days.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No?
Yeah.
I hope anyways with each generation we're becoming more comfortable talking about
Mm-hmm.
periods.
Mm-hmm.
Just as an aside, and every time I go into a pharmacy now, there's one pharmacy I've seen and that's done this, and now I check every time. You know, the like the signs that hang above the aisles,
Yeah.
and they usually say feminine sanitary products.
Right. Yeah.
Why does it have to be sanitary? It's just we're
Right.
bleeding.
Yeah.
It's not gross and disgusting, first
Mm-hmm.
of all. So then some of them just say feminine products.
Yeah.
But then I went into one and it said tampons and liners.
Imagine.
Big giant sign that hangs over the aisle
Yeah.
that tells you what's in that aisle.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see more of that. Why
Yeah. Yeah.
just say tampons and liners? It's not a
Yeah.
big secret.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like the
Yeah.
next aisle over has toothpaste and deodorant.
Yeah, band-aids, right? Like that's the other thing, like band-aids I was thinking about recently because everyone knows what a band-aid is. But so like, like if you ask someone for a band-aid, no one's going to be like, "Oh, here's your sneaky little band-aid." Like everyone's like, "Here's your band-aid." Like
Yeah.
if you're bleeding from any other zone, people
Ooh,
are like,
yes.
"Oh, yes, I have something for that." But bleed from that area is like, "Oh, here's your
Yeah.
tampon."
Okay. That was totally like a sidebar, but it kind of came like we've
Hmm.
had some good guests that like have owned their own businesses and been in the wellness field and stuff, including Louise again, who
Hmm.
was
Hmm.
any other guests that are mentionables to you that you're like that you like really walked away being like that was amazing?
I really loved our conversation with Sam.
Mm, seriously.
He was so open and honest and interesting, like, and really got to this feeling that it's hard to ever feel good enough. Again, I don't want to overuse the word like heartbreaking, but like it was heartbreaking for me to hear him like admit that like he could barely believe us when we were talking about him being like a genuine nice person. Yeah, because like I've been there and I don't know if I've ever fully escaped it either.
I think almost probably every human being can say, I don't know if I've really fully escaped it. Right. And so
Mhm.
that episode was called Grief and Trust. And that was with
Yeah.
Sam Mitchell. And Sam is a 20-year-old adult living with autism.
Hmm.
And he also has his own podcast called
Yeah.
Autism Rocks and Rolls. And he was really honest about being bullied. And we had a conversation about that. So if out there, if you want to listen to that, if you haven't heard it yet, I really enjoyed that conversation too. And the interesting thing about that one, and I realized this is like my lesson learned
Mm.
from that episode about myself is I really like closure. And there was no way to close it other than to just say,
Mhm.
thank you for telling your story.
Yeah.
Right. And it's okay to do that. And that's what I learned too. Cause sometimes I'm like, oh, I want to give feedback to make this person feel good or whatever. And that taught me about like habits that I can get into of giving feedback. And
Hmm.
it's okay to just say, yeah, that sucks. That hurts. That
Hmm.
sucks. And it's okay to say that to your friends. We don't have to make people feel better. Just by them telling the story to a safe person can make them feel better. And sometimes there isn't closure other than thank you for telling me your story. And
Yeah,
that was
for
kind of like one
sure.
of my lessons learned from that episode as well.
Mm. And then a lesson we got from a previous season, but we definitely implemented more this season, was making sure that guests had another chance just to say anything else. Because something we accidentally did in previous seasons is we would go through the format and then it would be kind of done and we jump right into those three breaths. Where this season, I think we maybe overcorrected a bit to be like, anything else?
Yeah.
Any last sentence? Do you have any other words you want to say?
Bueller.
Uh, yeah, I liked that approach more. I think really making sure that after they've shared and after we've had our feedback session, that the guest gets the last word. I think that was a shift for us that we will continue into this season.
Yeah. And I think that's also like a life lesson for me, anyways, as well, is we can get into patterns or habits in our relationships or in our friend groups or in our families. Like, I'm the person that gives advice about this, and I'm the fun person, and I'm the clown, and I'm the
Mm-hmm.
whatever, right? And
Yeah.
to remember when you're there to listen, be there to listen and
Mm-hmm.
to leave that space for people to have the last word or to say their aha moment too. And so
Mm-hmm.
that was a good one too. Couple other incredible episodes that I want to give shout outs to because I just think they're
Mm-hmm.
great is the friendship should not feel like a power struggle episode
Mm-hmm. With Nadia.
with Nadia Shabazz. And that was really great. She's a writer and a former news producer, and she talks about criticism about being too sensitive.
Right. Yeah.
And I went right in. I was like, what age was that person that told you that? And nobody should tell you that, right? And then she was like, well, I can see that from there. And she was a lot kinder about it. But I was like, no,
Mhm.
nobody should tell you that, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
that was an interesting, like, learning one for me because sometimes when I step on my like feminist soapbox or
Sure.
whatever, and I'm never gonna back down. Sorry, everybody. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but also like to where's that fine line between saying this generation treated people this way and it was socially appropriate for them 20
Mm-hmm.
years ago, and where's the fine line between being like, okay, that's just their generation, or no, I believe that that people can change at any age and people should learn at any age,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that one was really interesting for me, and it was also
Yeah.
really interesting to talk about the idea of, I think, being called sensitive in a way of like, oh, well, you're just too sensitive. Let things fall off your back. I think it's a microaggression.
Mm-hmm.
And so that one was really interesting too. Do you remember anything from that episode?
Yeah, no, I also just remember this idea that like sensitivity is a gift and like we can choose who we give that gift to. Because not every receiver is a good receiver of that gift. So that really helped me just in my relationships overall. Um,
So it's
yeah.
interesting because it kind of helped us in like two opposite ways that one. So that was
Mm-hmm.
like we learned from her, and the discussion that we had from her helped us both in kind of what
Mm-hmm.
you were saying about like, when do I be vulnerable and share that
Yeah.
sensitivity and when do I not? And I'm saying like, no, like share it, right? So
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it kind of shows a little bit of a dichotomy between us. So that one was really great. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really like her newsletter too. Like I've subscribed to lots of newsletters at this point, and I would say Nadia's gets opened every month.
Yeah, she is a beautiful writer, and right now she's
Hmm.
working on writing a story about her Sicilian family's fascist past. And so she's kind of diving into that, and
Yeah.
she's sharing small tidbits and other things in her news stories as she's in this writing process. And so yeah, if you want to listen to that episode, that one's called Friendship Should Not Feel Like a Power Struggle. And in the episode notes, we have the link to sign up for her newsletter, which it's true.
Hmm.
My inbox is so full of newsletters that I just don't open.
Yeah.
And but when I get a newsletter that's actually like, oh, this is really interesting, it only comes once a month, and there's a couple paragraphs here that give me pause to think
Hmm.
or have educated me or given me some knowledge. Those are kind of newsletters that I like, and I really like her too.
Hmm.
Like that newsletter too. Another one I want to point out is, and then I hang on, what was it called? And then I deleted my book.
With Jody or Geet. Yeah.
So she also an author, the second
Yeah.
author that we've had on, and she was talking about a little bit about like writer's block, and then she deleted a whole entire book. And do you remember what she said? We said, "How does it feel?" And she said, "It was gone, but I didn't feel empty."
Hmm. Hmm. Bang on.
And it was just like a great lesson in letting go. Like I
Hmm.
feel like we learned from her, right? And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
she started having aha moments on the episode too, and then it ended up being like aha moment, aha moment, aha moment, and it was really great. Enjoyed that episode too. So
Hmm.
I think there's been so many lessons.
Totally. And then the lessons with just us too, right? Like
Yeah.
that's why we started this podcast, is just that the two of us have some really interesting things. I have really enjoyed our process.
Yeah, I really
Yeah.
enjoyed our process and our season. And I also want to thank all the listeners. I want to thank
Hmm.
you. I want to thank all of our guests that reach out after listening to my Me Too episode.
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
and I don't think that I would have been able to record that episode if we hadn't had all of the amazing guests that we had this season
Mm.
to give me the courage to do it, because they had the courage to come on and tell these stories, and it gave me the courage to tell my story too. And
Yeah.
so that was really powerful and meaningful too. And again, I just want to say, like, our first priority and first intent with this podcast is to help people let go of shame, regret, guilt, either by coming on as a guest, but just by listening. When you hear a story and you go, I feel the exact same way, I've had a really similar experience, that can be enough for you to start letting go too and start
Mm.
healing. Our primary purpose with this podcast is to change the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Saying
yeah,
that, but
exactly.
you know what I mean. You can probably
Hmm.
say it better, but our primary
No, I
purpose
think.
really is genuinely that we want to get these stories out. We want people to hear the
Hmm.
stories, and that's starting to happen. And
Yeah.
I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, actually, when I was talking to my hairstylist about the podcast, I specifically, he like even was like, "Oh, so people would feel less alone," as I was describing it, and I was like, "Yeah, exactly."
Yeah. And
And yeah, I think we're doing that. And I think your Me Too story, it's so it's so interesting how time works, right? Because I feel like in a way, I was like, "Ugh, are we too late? Are we too late to talk about Me Too? Because Me Too was however long ago the first like case was that people really talked about. And then subsequently, after recording it and releasing it, it seems like every couple of days there's still more and more like terrible stories. And I'm not saying that like the episode should have changed things. I'm just saying like why has the conversation slowed down so much when it seems like every week there's a new person in the news that was like somebody that maybe I don't even want to say it, like someone who had kind of this like image of trustworthiness. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like,
yeah, I think I do, because it's really interesting actually, because again, that episode is like a special episode. We didn't
yeah,
do the check-ins or we didn't
no.
follow the format. Shadoe just like really gently and beautifully guided me through telling my
Mm,
story. And but Shadoe knew what I was going to say on that episode. So it wasn't,
yeah,
we prepped for that. It wasn't a like, I don't know what your regret is going to be
yeah,
today,
yeah,
which
yeah.
is what most of our episodes are like. But we kind of talked about that before we hit record.
Hmm.
Are people going to listen to this? And I said, this is the reason I want to do it, is because
Yeah.
I want to keep the conversation going. Maybe it's confirmation bias that you're seeing all of those things on the news now or whatever, but maybe it's not. I
No.
would say it's probably not. And we have to keep the conversation going. And I do have to say, one really interesting thing that happened, some of the feedback I got from that is I got some text messages from male growers that I've known for many
Mm.
years. And I was really interested in their feedback or their comments or their support.
Hmm.
A few of them were like, I was actually afraid to listen to the episode. I was afraid that I might know the person you're talking about, and then I wouldn't know what to do with that information. I mean, I
Yeah.
didn't name names, obviously, but
Yeah.
and some of them, and they were just like, I was really afraid to listen to it, to know that that's like the reality of what's going on. I really wanted to keep the wool over my eyes,
Hmm.
which is interesting, right? That
Yeah.
men are saying that. Like
Yeah.
I didn't want to listen to it. I wasn't ready to listen to it, right?
Hmm.
But they did. They
Yeah.
listened to it, right? To
Yeah.
support me. And I'm like, tell other men to listen to it.
Hmm.
Tell
Hmm.
other male growers to listen
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah.
Because it is no longer the time for you to be afraid and for you to have
Hmm.
the wool pulled over your eyes.
Yeah.
That time is over.
Hmm.
Tell them to
Yeah.
listen to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I really value their support, the text messages that I got from male rowers that have known me for a very long time, and and value that they listened and valued that they were vulnerable to me and said I was actually scared to listen to it because I didn't know how I was going to
Hmm.
feel. And I think that's
Hmm.
really important to just point out. It's okay that you were scared to listen to it. The point is that you listen to it so that you get a better grasp on reality.
Yeah.
I want to thank all of the male comments that I got, the
Hmm.
male text messages I got or DMs that I got from men
Hmm.
about the Me Too episode too. And I encourage you
Yeah.
to keep sharing it and have everyone listen to it, because that's exactly it. We want to keep the
Hmm.
conversation going.
Yeah. Well, and then in the last month or so, there's been all that conversation of like the man versus bear.
Can you
thought
explain that for
project.
everybody? Because I was actually talking to somebody yesterday and they didn't know this. So can you?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So there was a thing going around social media where someone was asking women who, let's say you were lost in the forest one day, would you rather be faced with a random bear or a random man? But overwhelmingly, the women chose bear because, like, yes, a bear could kill you, but even that would be better than some of the things men are capable of, especially random men who you don't know
Yeah.
them at all.
See, I didn't
Yeah.
know this either because I've one of my, I guess, New Year's resolutions, I don't know, is to stop doom scrolling as much, maybe, but I think
Smart.
I've gone too far and I need to come back in and watch the news a little bit more. So I've been like but when you told me that last week, I was like, immediately when you told me, before you told me what people are choosing,
Hmm.
my mind went to the bear.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
then now that I've been like scrolling around a little bit more and stuff too,
Hmm.
I have seen people just commenting on some things and now I saying I choose the bear. So now I
Hmm.
know what that comment means.
Yes. Yes.
I don't even know what to say because
I
that's
know.
exactly where my instinct went.
Yeah.
Where did your
Yeah.
instinct go when you heard the
Oh,
question?
bear for sure. And it has
Bear.
nothing to do with my very sweet husband. It just
No,
has to
nothing to
do
do
with
with,
like,
yeah.
yeah, it just has to do with like you don't know the random the chaotic nature of a random stranger. And like maybe with a woman I'd feel the same way, but I just I don't know. The thing too is like really spoke true to me with all of the kind of conversation that happened around this. The point that really like just hit me in my heart was if a bear mauled me to death, I would I would be believed.
Mm.
People would believe that the bear killed me.
And they would believe the physical evidence
Hmm.
that the bear killed you. Like there's still even questions about physical evidence to this day with
Hmm.
assaults, right?
Yeah.
And so they would believe the story and they would believe the
Hmm.
physical evidence.
Yeah. And then it was really the most interesting thing about it to me was that there was a lot of men who got really offended, which again kind of explained why we choose the bear in the first place.
I know
But
it's just like
some,
case in point.
oh yeah, and but some of the things they were posting were like about like how dangerous bears are, as if like women weren't thinking of that when they made their decision. Like very mansplainy of like, well, don't you know a bear could kill you? And it's like, don't you know that a man could kill me? Like, well, why are you telling me that? Like, I do understand that bears are dangerous. Why would you think I don't understand that?
They will never understand the privilege they have of walking
Hmm.
down the street and feeling safe.
Yeah,
Like I still am like, okay, hold my keys in between my pointer finger and my middle finger in case I
yeah,
need to scratch someone,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it's just an undertone. It
Hmm.
doesn't mean that I'm terrified all the time and anxiety, but like if I'm
Yeah,
walking at nighttime, it's just an undertone, right?
yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
again, like I guess it's also like the almost the controlled chaos of the bear versus like, and again, it's not even about the actual situation at this point. Like it's ballooned into this whole other conversation where people have now used it as a way, similar to Me Too, to talk about their sexual assaults. So it'll be like a bear never walked in on me while I was changing for the pool when I was 8 years old. No, but it's good. Like it's like this good way. It's this way that like some women are finding a way to like come forward with stuff that they're still holding close to their chest. Sorry, yeah, so some women are finding it as a way to say like things in their life that they've never been able to like
Yeah.
say. They'll
Yeah.
say a bear never did this terrible thing that they have experienced, right?
Yeah.
So that was a really interesting thing to look at on threads. Like you could click on this like a bear never, and then there was like all these threads of people saying like these terrible things that had happened to them with the preface a bear never.
But I think like the interesting
But
thing about that is that again, it's provided a space for people
mhm,
to say things. Maybe some people writing those things on the threads have never written it publicly on social
exactly.
media or anything, and
Hmm.
it's giving them a release and some relief, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I mean, it all matters. Doing it in a
Hmm.
one line that way, coming onto our coming onto our podcast,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever, like
Yeah.
all these conversations matter.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting because some of my female friends, especially the ones who are a little bit more like physical, I guess physically strong, one of them literally said like, "Well, I've taken MMA classes, so it doesn't matter." I was like, "Oh, you're not quite connecting with the idea."
Yeah. I'm gonna something that I didn't say during my Me Too episode
hmm
that I've been thinking about a lot that I
Okay,
wish
yeah.
I'd said. So, okay, here's a small regret for this episode.
hmm
I regret not saying this. Before I was assaulted, I thought I will never put myself in that situation because I'm smart
hmm
enough to not
hmm
put myself in that situation.
Yeah.
I would never be stupid enough to put myself in that situation.
hmm
That's not how it works. And
Yeah.
if you judge someone based on that, that is simply not how it works because nobody wants to be in that situation.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter how smart you think you are or how strong you think you are. You should never be judged or judge yourself for being in that situation because it doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter how strong you are. It can happen and we need to
hmm
forgive ourselves for letting it happen. But before, I was very adamant. I was like, that would never happen to me. I would never be stupid enough to be alone with a person or whatever, right? And
hmm
I wish I'd said that during the episode. So, anyways, I've said it now.
Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that. Can I add to
Yeah,
that?
you can add to that
Okay.
for sure.
Something I've been thinking about ever since we did that episode, actually. I definitely, in a way, kind of put any of that kind of thing happening to me in the back of my brain as like, well, I'm glad I got through it. Like I'm glad I'm done university, I'm done my clubbing days, and that never happened to me. Thank gosh. So in my mind, I've maybe have mistakenly thought I was no longer at risk. And it's only been in the
One,
last like it's only been in the last few weeks with the bear conversation and with our episode that I was like, wait a minute, this isn't over. This isn't just something that happens when you're like a
when you're
young
in your
20
20s.
something. But like because I'm in my late 30s now, I'm like, oh, like there was definitely a sense of relief in me that that's never going to happen to me and that I never have to worry about it ever again. But like that's not true. And I do need to be worried and we do need to keep having the conversation. And so, yeah.
Okay, can I give feedback to that?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So there's this thing that happens where you feel like you become invisible as we age.
True.
I think I mean it could probably happen in your 30s, it can happen
hmm
in your 40s, in your 50s, beyond that where you're like, "Oh, I'm not an attractive woman anymore because I'm aging," or "I'm not an
Mm,
attractive woman anymore for various reasons." So you think you're invisible,
right.
right? And in some ways you are, right? Like ageism exists, all these things exist. In some ways like you're
Mm,
not being objectified as much. But I want everybody out there to remember that sexual assault is not about attractiveness, it's about power.
hmm hmm
That can happen whatever your body size, whatever your strength, whatever your mental strength, whatever your physical strength, whatever your age.
hmm
And that's like a misconception too, right? Is that we're
hmm
young and we're in our 20s. I mean, it's a misconception both ways, which is a whole
Yeah.
other conversation, which we won't dive deep into, but you know what I mean? Like, oh, it's the woman's fault because she's attractive.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it has nothing to do with that.
hmm
It has to do with wanting power
hmm
over
hmm
another human being.
Yeah,
It's not about sex.
totally.
Yeah.
And yeah, again, I think I mistakenly, like similar how you're saying, like before it happened, you thought, oh, I would never be dumb enough to have this happen to me. I think I was like literally patting myself on the shoulders, being like, oh, you were so smart. You never put yourself in that situation. But I
Yeah.
did. I have been blackout drunk in public and not known how I got back in my bed. Like,
Mhm.
so I did do that. I'm just fucking lucky.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's
Well, I want to thank you for saying that too,
mm-hmm,
as feedback to me saying it, because
mm-hmm,
that's part of the conversation that we didn't have that day. And we've
yeah,
had it. And I think it's important to like
mm-hmm,
recognize that. and recognize like how we can judge ourselves by saying, I'm better than that, or I'd never put myself in that
Mm-hmm.
situation, because that also leads to the shame, right? Like I'm a
Yeah.
strong woman. I would never put myself in that situation because I'm a strong woman. And then afterwards, it was really hard for me to tell my story because I was judging myself because I thought I'm not a
Yeah.
strong woman anymore. I come from a long line of feminists. I've talked about it before. Henrietta Muir Edwards was my great aunt who got the vote for women in Canada along with
Mm-hmm.
Nellie McClung. Great grandma was the second female doctor in Canada. Like I come from a long line of strong, I'm using finger quotation marks here, everybody,
Mm-hmm.
strong women.
Yeah.
So what is a strong woman? We're not going to answer that question today. That's a whole
No.
other episode, but like reevaluate what your definition of strong is. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying say that you're weak, but reevaluate what true strengths are. Lean into those strengths, but remember that if something bad happens to you, it doesn't mean you're not strong,
Mm-hmm.
and you shouldn't judge yourself for it. And we shouldn't judge other people for it. We need to redefine what a strong woman is, or do we even have to have what a strong woman is? I don't know.
Right.
But
Right. No,
yeah.
incredible. Well, I think that might be a nice way to kind of end our season 5 kickoff episode, unless you want to add anything about maybe what's coming up this season or what our listeners can expect.
Yeah. So more guests,
Mm-hmm.
more incredible guests. And again, if you want to be a guest on the podcast, it's a process with us. We don't just like
Mm-hmm.
record on the one day. We meet with you before to make sure that to hear a little bit about your story and get to know you. So you either meet with me or Shadoe on a Zoom call. We give you the template. Yeah, we give you the template with fill in the blanks. We help guide you through creating your story to tell it. We edit if they're afterwards, if you're like, oh, I wish I hadn't said that one part, I'll edit it out for you. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's not coming on the podcast is we want it to be an experience for you, and we want it to be a healing experience for you, or an
Mm-hmm.
exciting experience, or a fun experience, or a relieving experience, or we want you to feel light and free afterwards or have an aha moment. All of the above could happen. One of the above could
Mm-hmm.
happen, whatever. But if you're interested, know that Shadoe and I, our main goal is to support you to be a guest, and to support you to tell your story so other people can hear it, and to support our listeners in hearing those stories in
Mm-hmm.
constructive ways and safe ways and valuable ways. So if you're interested in being a guest, the link is in the show notes for all of
Yeah.
our episodes now. You can fill out the form. We'll send you an email, follow up with you. And if you're interested in being a guest and have a story you want to tell, we want to hear it, and we want to support you in sharing it.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, everybody, at at the end of every episode, we do 3 breaths of letting go, or 3 breaths. And if you've been following along, we change it each season. So I wanted to explain a little bit about this season. So this season's 3 breaths are a little different. They're calling in breaths. And what does calling in mean? So when we experience a letting go or a relief, we're clearing space, right? We're clearing space. So when you're listening to the episode, you may feel like you've cleared some space by listening to somebody let go of something or tell their story, put it out there, right? And when we clear space, it's important to call in what we want to fill that space. Now, I know this sounds a bit woo woo, and I love woo woo, and I also love science. Okay. So when we're clearing space, we actually are clearing space in our brain. It's happening. It's proven. And so we want to take our power back, or take our control back, or just even have fun with it and think about abundance. That's what this season's 3 breaths are about. They are about calling in. And I'm going to say what they are here so that you kind of get an idea. But this is what our 3 breaths are this year. I know forgiveness may be challenging, but it can also be liberating. I'm calling in the humility to allow forgiveness to enter my life and experience how it transforms me. Here's the one thing I want to say about calling in forgiveness. You decide what forgiveness is for you. For me, forgiveness isn't about the other person. Forgiveness is about forgiving myself for putting myself in situations that I don't feel good about. So you can decide if forgiveness is for you, for the other person, whatever it is. But I just want you to think about that as we're going into our 3 breaths this season. Breath number 2, my body holds immense wisdom. It can guide me towards healing and wellness. I'm calling in the ability to listen to my body and learn from it. That means listen to ourselves, because our inner monologue's part of our body. Trust our gut, but also listen to your body. There's a reason that the expression pain in your neck exists, or that person's a pain in my ass, right? Maybe you actually do have like tight hips and a pain in your ass. And then you can think, what's making me squeeze my ass? Right? Something's bothering me in life. So listen to your body and trust it. So I'm calling in the openness to listen to my body and know the wisdom in my body. And then the last breath this season is, I'm choosing to believe that I am magnificent. I'm calling in joy, connection, strength, and love. You're saying, I'm being open to the abundance of this in my life. And you know what? If we can say those 3 things and call in those 3 things, call in that energy to ourselves, we're literally telling our subconscious brain and the woo-woo and the spirit to be open to receiving those things, and we'll be more aware of our body and more aware of forgiveness and letting go, and more aware of saying to ourselves, I am magnificent and I do deserve more joy and more connection and more love. And by calling it in, really what we're saying is, I'm open to it. That's the 3 breaths for this season, everybody. I hope you enjoy them as we go through the next 10 or 12 episodes, however many episodes are in the season. We haven't decided yet, but I just wanted to explain the change, because they're a bit different than just saying, I'm relieving this, I'm letting go of this. There's a little bit of like science behind it and a little bit of woo-woo behind it, but they're a little bit more in depth this season. So
nice.
Think about them, everybody, as you wait for the next episode when we do those 3 breaths again. And I hope you love them as much as I love.
Well, I'm just so excited to get this season out there and meet more people and connect with all of you.
Me too. I'm so proud of you, Shadoe, and thankful for you. I'm so proud of me.
It should be.
And thank you to me. And I'm so thankful again for all of our guests. Thankful to all of our listeners. Thank you, everybody, for giving us those 5-star reviews on Spotify, giving us written reviews on Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much for supporting us. Thank you for telling your friends about it. Again, our biggest wish is for as many people as possible to listen to these podcasts and to create change in their life. So thank you so much, everybody. We appreciate you so much. And we can't wait to see you for this season, and lots of great stuff's coming up.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Thank you. Okay. Bye.
Bye. This episode of Let's Relieve Regret was produced by Shadoe Ball and Victoria Muir-Bercia.
Editing by me, Victoria Muir-Bercia.
We are an independent podcast supported by you, our listeners.
If you think this podcast sends a valuable message, you had an aha moment, or learned something new about yourself, help us realize our goal of reaching as many listeners as possible.
We encourage you to take action and support us right now by choosing one of the following options.
You can easily support us by
following us on Instagram at relieve.regret.
Tell 2 friends.
Leave a 5-star review on whatever app you're listening to us on.
Leave a tip at coffee.com/Let's Relieve Regret podcast. That's ko-fi.com/Let's Relieve Regret podcast.
Join our conversations in the Facebook group, Let's Relieve Regret Podcast.
Find all this information, all the links, and more in the podcast notes. Okay, bye.
Bye.